My name is Jonathan Krangle, and I'm the head of customer success here at Mode Analytics. And we're here today to talk a little bit about Mode Studio. If you're getting this webinar, it's because you've signed up for Mode, and we want to help you get started as quickly as possible. We know that you in the analyst community are itching to answer really interesting and complex questions. And that's why you've signed up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about how Mode Studio, which is a free offering that we provide, gives you the tools to answer those questions and visualize your results and then collaborate with others in your organization. On this webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about how Mode Studio supports your workflow, the workflow that as analysts you already go through to answer really interesting and challenging questions. We're also going to talk a little bit about core concepts in Mode so that by the time you spin it up and start using it, you know your way around and understand some of the features and some of the surface area of the product. We'll talk a little bit about how to connect your database to get you started. We'll show you that in the product. We'll also go through how to query data, build a simple report, and I'll show you around some of the more advanced analytics features so you can see just how easy it is to get up and running with our Python and R notebooks and advanced visualizations and highly customizable JavaScript and HTML and things like that. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the resources that we invest in every day to help make you as our user base successful with our products and with your analytics at large. And then we'll answer some questions from the crowd. So let's talk a little bit about Mode Studio and how we think about workflow. As an analyst, as I was growing up through my career, I remember that no matter what the question was or what the task was, I always followed a pretty similar process when I went out and I had to try to answer that question with data. And what we've done is we've designed Mode around this core analyst workflow. We call it, for analysts by analysts. We've designed a product from the ground up to help support you as you're trying to answer these questions. And I remember the first step every time I embarked on a project was I first had to gather information, right? And I would always do this by querying various data sources and bringing all kinds of data together. And usually the language that I preferred to work in was SQL. So that's the first thing that Mode helps you do. You can connect to any number of data sources to your Mode organization, which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment. And you can use SQL to query that data and kind of gather all the disparate pieces that you need using SQL into individual result sets. Once you've done that, you now need to visualize it. So you need to turn each result set into a thing that allows people to take it from a table and actually look at it in the form of a chart or a graph or some sort of interactive visualization. And we give you the tools to do that, both through our built-in chart types, Python and R visualizations, if you really want to take the data that you've pulled out in SQL to the next level and do some of the stuff that's a little harder to do in SQL alone, regressions and correlations and things like that. Or you can really take things to the next level by utilizing D3 or really any kind of visualization library that you can embed into your Mode report using JavaScript, customize with CSS, etc. And we provide you with some tools that help you go and get to those visualizations much more quickly. The next step, of course, is taking these visualizations, contextualizing them, and organizing them into a thing that you can use to present. Sometimes that looks like PowerPoint, but more often than not these days, that looks like something cloud-based that you can share and use and iterate on with your constituents and the folks that you're sharing it with. And so that's why we at Mode built a cloud-based product. So every Mode report is really hosted on the web, in the cloud, and you can share that with any number of folks so that they can digest your information, ask questions, and collaborate with you on it. And you can do all kinds of interesting stuff in terms of layout, using our drag and drop interface, or you can go really deep and edit the HTML directly and turn your Mode report into kind of a self-contained hosted little web app that is fed by the data and information that you have. And then finally, as you share that, we give you the tools to share that via email, Slack, taking it and exporting it as a PDF and sharing it in the medium of your choice. We give you all of these different things. And this is all available within the context of your free Mode Studio account. The first concept to become familiar with is that of the mode organization. An organization is what we call a collection of users that want to collaborate together and share access to reports, queries, and data sources and things like that. When you connect a data source to Mode, what you're actually doing is connecting it to your Mode organization, the one that you've already created. You can be a member of any number of organizations. You might have one that you're a member of that's part of your company. You might have another one that you have personally that you have connected to your own private data source. There's no overlap between organizations other than the fact that you can be a member of multiple ones. But within an organization, that's kind of how we think about sharing. So when you invite somebody else to join your organization, you're inviting them to share query access to a data source and to share the other reports that are inside of it. Which brings us to the Mode report, which is the atomic unit of work. It's the thing, it's where all the fun happens in Mode. So even if you want to just explore a database using a query editor, all the way to building something production ready, like a dashboard or deep analysis, this all happens inside of a single Mode report. And we'll get into that a little bit more deeply later. Spaces are places inside your Mode organization where reports live. There are a number of kinds of spaces, which we'll go over in detail later, but suffice it to say, where a report lives, what space it lives in, controls who can see that report and who has access to that report, who can discover that report. They also help you organize where the reports are, so you can find them later. A data source in Mode is a single shared connection to a database. The key here is that it's shared. Like I mentioned before, every data source that's connected to your Mode organization can be queried by all the other members within your organization. Some of our paid plans allow you to be a little bit more granular about that, so you can connect multiple data sources and say, I only want these members to be able to query this one data source, but everybody else can connect and query the others. But in the case of Mode Studio, every data source that you connect to the organization is shared with just the members inside that organization. You can connect multiple data sources. So feel free to connect a Postgres database, as well as Redshift, as well as BigQuery, or any of the above. Really, the sky is the limit, and reports can visualize data from multiple data sources simultaneously. Another great feature of Mode is the Mode Public Warehouse. The Mode Public Warehouse is a free, publicly accessible Postgres database that's hosted by Mode and connected to every Mode organization, including yours. You can upload data to the Mode Public Warehouse, and a lot of folks in the community can upload data to the Mode Public Warehouse. The key with the Mode Public Warehouse is that anything put into it is publicly available. So you don't want to put anything proprietary or sensitive into it. But it provides a great place for folks using our SQL School to experiment with SQL, or who are new to SQL and want to just get their hands a little bit dirty with data and analytics. They can analyze public data and post it here. What's great about the Mode Public Warehouse is it's totally free and it's available to you at any time. So what you can do is you can really show your stuff to the analyst community using data uploaded in the Mode Public Warehouse. Which brings us to the community space. The community space can be enabled in any Mode organization. It's a home for reports built exclusively on the Mode Public Warehouse. So you can't put any reports that are built on your private data into it. But any reports that are in the community space can be viewed by anyone out on the internet with the URL. So they don't have to be a member of your organization like all the rest of the reports in your organization in order to see it. One thing that's super important here that we want to emphasize, the only data that is publicly accessible on the internet by users outside your organization is data in the Mode Public Warehouse. Mode employees will never view your report output, query results, or private data without your express permission. There are times you might write into our support team and we may work with you to help troubleshoot a query or something along those lines, but you will always be in control. You will always expressly consent to us seeing your report data or query results if that's something that you want. In addition, any reports that live inside your Mode organization that query your private data are shared only with other members of your organization, unless you choose to share them externally. Want to be clear about that. Make sure that the only data that can be accessed externally is data that's in the Mode public warehouse, reports built on top of that. Great, so now that we've got some of the fundamentals covered, let's talk about what it's like to actually get connected and get started with Mode. Before you connect your database to Mode, there's a few things that you're going to need to get in order. First, you need to know the database type that you're connecting to. What we mean here is it a Redshift database? Is it Postgres, Google BigQuery, that sort of thing? Knowing the type of database that you're connecting to is the first question Mode's going to ask when you try to connect. Second, you're going to need to understand your database credentials. This is your username and password, as well as the connection information. In this case, in most cases, it's a host name, so either an IP address or a domain name. Some database types have different pieces of information that they need, such as BigQuery or Hive. Those sorts of things will be presented to you when you go through the database connection flow. And on our help site, help.modeanalytics.com, we have lots of articles that can help guide you through that process as well. Ultimately, if you're not sure and you're trying to connect to your database and you're not sure where to find these things, either look inside your existing query editor, look at the edit connections or edit connection properties area, or simply ask an engineer who may have stood up that database if that wasn't you. They can help you figure out what all of these things are. Finally, the big question that you also have to figure out potentially is your database accessible via the internet? What has to happen here, because Mode and the Mode product lives on our servers, we need a way to communicate with your database. There are two ways that Mode can connect to your database, and they hinge on the answer to really this one question. Do you need to be on a VPN or in the office or in a specific location in order to connect to your database today? If the answer to that question is no, then you can probably have Mode connect directly to your database. Now, you may need to ask the database administrator to whitelist our IP addresses so that your database will accept an incoming connection from us. If the answer to this question is yes, you most likely will need to utilize a different approach. Mode has what's called our Bridge Connector application, which is a small, very lightweight, easy to configure application that the connection process in Mode will walk you through setting up. That installs on either your computer or another computer with access to your database. And it's a helper that allows Mode to talk to your database using that computer. Great. So let's actually dig into the product. So welcome to Mode Studio. When you log into Mode, you should see something relatively similar to what I've got on screen right now. What you're looking at is a Mode Studio organization for a fictional company called Octan Limited, which is what we're going to use for the purposes of the demonstration today. I've got a few reports already built in here for the purposes of the demonstration, so you might not have anything. But I've just got some things in here so we can see the product from a few different angles. So the first thing we want to do is get the lay of the land. What are we looking at? In the upper left-hand corner, you can see my name, as well as the name of the organization that I gave it when I created it. We've also got a few pieces of navigation that we can help us understand where reports are in the system. I can see starred reports, so these are reports over here. I can actually put a star next to any report in Mode that I have. Allows me to discover that report later. So if I put a little star next to this report and I look in the starred section, this is how I can discover an important report later on. Nice and easy. It's like a bookmark. Below that, I've got the My Work section. My Work shows an ordered list of reports, all the reports that I have actually created, regardless of where inside the system they live. So we talked a little bit about spaces before as places for where reports can live. As you can see, there's a bunch of stuff in here, and they live in various places, but the common theme is they've all been created by me. And then finally, we've got the Spaces section. So let's talk a little bit about what spaces are and how they control visibility. The personal space is the place where all reports live when you create them. So the personal space is the first home. Anytime you create something new, it will get deposited in the personal space, and it will live there until you move it outside the personal space. All reports in the personal space are visible to any member of your organization as long as they have the URL. But no one else in the organization will be able to find reports in your personal space through search or by browsing around the UI. This is because this is like a drafts area. So anytime I'm working on stuff, you can see there's a few things in here called untitled report. That's where it's going to live. It's going to live in the personal space. And I can take the URL and send it to a colleague and have them open it up, and then they can comment on it. But it's not going to be discoverable by anybody else in the organization while it's still living in here. The next down is the community space. If this community space is enabled in your organization, in organization settings, you can move reports that you build that have only ever queried the Mode Public Warehouse into it. And then these reports can be viewed by anybody on the internet that you provide a link to. And then finally, in your organization, you will have what we call an open space. Open spaces are shared. So anything that goes inside this space can be viewed by any member of your organization. So the typical workflow is I will build something and start constructing a report, and it will start out in my personal space. I may work on a few iterations of it. Once it's ready for prime time and I want to share it with other members of my organization and have it be discoverable by them, I'll move it into this shared space in the organization. You can't move reports back into your personal space once they've been moved out of your personal space. But you can see in here, I've got Jennifer Chu, who's also in my organization. I can see some of the reports she's created alongside the ones that I have created. Great. So before we begin and actually query data, we've got to connect a database to the organization. So let's walk through that. To connect a database, click on the name of the organization in the upper left-hand corner and click on Connect a Database. As mentioned before, the first thing we've got to do is select the type of database. Mode connects to a wide variety of popular relational databases. In this case, we're going to connect to a PostgreSQL database. Now I'm asked for the credentials for this database. Now, as we mentioned before, if your database is behind a VPN or a firewall or something along those lines, you may need to use the bridge connector, and we can provide you with a little bit of help here. But in this case, we're going to connect the database directly. In order to do that, I'm going to get the database credentials out of my handy password manager. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call this database Octane Warehouse Data is what we're going to call the description. And I'm going to grab the, let's see here, I'm going to grab the host name. The port is already filled in for me. Then my database name, got that here. So we'll put that in. And now this is a good point to talk a little bit about database configuration. You can use the username and password that you already use to connect to your database. But a best practice is to create a new user inside your database, or have an admin create a new user inside your database that's explicitly for the purposes of Mode connecting to it. And so in this case, I've created Octane Mode user. I'm going to grab the password, put that in, and click connect. Great, my database is now connected. And we should jump into creating a new report. All right. So when you create a new report, and you can do that, by the way, anywhere from the Mode interface using this green plus in the upper right-hand corner, the first thing that you are entered into is the report editor view, which should look pretty familiar to you if you've ever written SQL in desktop editor before. So the first thing that we want to do is get the lay of the land on the report editor. So in the middle of the screen, that's where your SQL code goes. That's how you're going to be able to query the database that we just connected to. In the upper right-hand corner, this is where you can select among the databases that are connected to your Mode organization, or if you want to query the Mode public warehouse. Whatever is selected in the upper right-hand corner here is the data source that the code in the middle of the screen is going to execute against. And on the right-hand side, this is the schema browser. The schema browser contains all of the schemas and tables that the user that you use to connect the data source has access to. It allows you to explore your database a little bit so you can get to querying much more easily. And then finally, on the left-hand side, this is where one or more queries and or all of the visualizations that you create on top of the result sets from those queries are going to live. In the case right now, this is a fresh report, so we've only got one query, but we'll see many of them down here as you start to create more. This is also how you can access the Python notebook and how you can access the report builder, which we'll get a little bit more into in a moment. So let's create a simple report. Let's say I want to dig into my orders data and understand a little bit more about what's going on with various products my organization has. So we're going to do select star from demo.orders. I'm going to click run. You can see the very first thing that Mode does is it executes that query, and we've got results down at the bottom. Now, because Mode runs in your web browser, and we know that the first thing that you're going to do is explore data, we have a handy feature that automatically adds a limit 100 to the end of every query that you execute so that you don't accidentally query too much data for your browser to handle. You can always turn that off by unchecking this checkbox and rerunning your query. You can see when I just executed that, I get 100 rows. Now I click run, and shortly thereafter, I get all the rows returned. What I'm going to do is I know that I'm going to be querying order data here, so I'm going to rename this to order data. Great, and that's going to help keep me a little bit more organized. So now that I have this data, let's say that I only care about 2015. So I'm going to add a where clause. Greater than or equal to Great. So now I've constrained the query. I'm only going to be looking at 2015 data. What I want to do is I want to build a visualization on top of that. So I'm going to go to the green plus over here. I'm going to say add chart. And what I want to do is I want to build a bar chart. So I'm going to switch that over to bar chart. And now I can use this drag and drop interface to very quickly spin up exactly the visualization I'm looking for. On the x-axis, I want the date. On the y-axis, what I want to look at are total sales. So I've got this glossy amount field here. I've got standard amount. And I've got poster amount. So I've got 3 different products. Now, right now, I've got all of 2015's data. It looks kind of ugly. So what I want to do is I want to zoom out a little bit and make sure that I'm rolling this up to month. Great. That's much better. I'm going to add a little title, 2015 sales by product type. Great. All right. So now I've got my first visualization built. One of the cool things about Mode is you can build multiple visualizations on top of a single query. So I'm going to build another visualization here. In this case, I'm going to do a combination line and bar chart. Again, I want the date on the x-axis, but in this case, what I want to do is I want to dig a little bit more into specific products, the glossy products. And again, I'm going to zoom my date out to month. Great. All right. And we're going to do 2015 glossy sales versus order volume. Great. So now I've got these two visualizations that I built on top of the same core data set. Great. So let's take a look at how these visualizations show up in the report builder. As you can see, the two visualizations that we've already created show up here. I can utilize the drag and drop interface to resize them, rearrange them if I want. The other thing that I get is a helpful data table for every single query that I've created. You can remove these if they're not necessary. One thing that you can do using the report builder is add context. So you can see a 2015 sales dashboard. We can make that a little bit bigger here. Great. And what I can even do is I can even add a text box. This is context for the first chart. Cool. And I can take that, drag it, put it beside the chart, and this allows us to add context to our analysis before we share it. So once you've got your report together, the next step is to share it with somebody. That's where the share button comes in. Utilizing Mode, you can very easily share your report with other members of your organization just by putting their email addresses in here. Check out my report. There we go. And I can attach a PDF or I can include a preview in the actual email. If I connect my Mode organization to my Slack team, I can also share this very quickly inside Slack, or I can grab a link to this report and put it in any communication medium of my choice. We make it nice and easy to share your results with other folks. Now remember, you're the report creator, so you're the only one that's going to be able to actually edit this report. But others who you share it with are going to be able to see the report output, and then they can provide commentary to you. You can rerun it and provide new results to them. So let's dig into some of the more advanced functionality. As I mentioned before, every Mode report has a built-in Python and R notebook that you can use to take your query results to the next level. We're going to use the magic of television to take a look at another report that already has some really cool stuff built out. So this is a customer order analysis, and you can see the visualizations are now a bit more complex. We've got some really interesting stuff going on in here and some interesting context. If I go to edit, and I go to the Python notebook, what I can see is that the query results for my report are automatically fed in, so as this data sets object. I've got my average order size by account, that matches up with this query over here. Order type, that matches up with this query. And utilizing a notebook style environment where I have a series of input and output cells, I can now interact with that data and create really interesting and cool Python visualizations. Any output I can actually add to my report as a visualization in line with other charts and graphs and text and things like that. Note that you can also switch your notebook over to R if you prefer to work in that language as well by utilizing this tag over here. Another tool that you have at your disposal for creating really compelling and interesting visualizations is the HTML editor. So if we take a look at the report builder again, you may have noticed there is this Edit HTML button in the report we were creating before. Every Mode report allows you to edit the actual HTML of the report. And in that HTML, you can embed your own CSS and your own JavaScript. In this particular report, we just have the automatically generated HTML and JavaScript. But if you want to get into something really interesting, let's take a look at a more advanced application. In this case, we've got a customer retention heat map. Now, this particular visualization was built out in D3. And if we look at this visualization, what we'll see is, again, the workflow we talked about. Step one is that the raw data was queried using SQL and gathered into a series of queries inside of the report. But inside the actual report builder, if you go to the HTML, you can see that one of Mode's libraries for creating these heat maps and these sorts of pivot tables has been used to feed the columns and the data from those queries into a series of D3 visualizations. You can include your own libraries out on the internet, and you can add your own CSS as well to style whatever is on here or the existing Mode elements. Really, the world is your oyster. Mode reports are tremendously powerful pieces of functionality that allow you to build really interesting and rich experiences for your end users. Finally, as the administrator of your organization, you may want to configure some of the settings for it. If you go into the upper left-hand corner and you click on your name, you get to organization settings. In here, you can manage a series of things. You can manage a few settings for your organization, as well as see who's a member of your organization. You can also manage the Slack integration, change the default theme that's used by charts and graphs, and manage the various connections and connection objects in your organization. So you can disconnect databases from here and that sort of thing. This is also where you can invite new members to join your organization and re-invite folks who maybe were members of your organization before. So thanks for joining us for the product demo. So as I mentioned before, Mode offers a ton of resources to help you get going and to help you build really interesting and compelling visualizations. We've got our gallery, which is a series of really interesting reports and like heat maps and funnel charts and chloropleth maps and all kinds of things, which can help inspire you to think about all the different things that you can do with our D3 visualization functionality. So we provide you with the source code as well as helper libraries to get you going. We've got our blog where we really talk about some of the leading edge stuff in the data space, as well as other products in the space, ETL tools. We talk about new analytics tools that you should think about introducing into your stack and various databases. Our about.modeanalytics.com site can help you with some of the functionality that's available, as well as some of the paid versions of Mode. Our forum is active, and it's a place where you can post and get answers from other members of the community. And then finally, our help site, help.modeanalytics.com, which provides detailed documentation on all of Mode's functionality. With that, let's take some questions. First question, am I limited to just the chart types that are listed in Mode? Answer to that is absolutely not. One of the reasons why we built Mode with the HTML editor and the ability to embed your own custom JavaScript in D3 is because we didn't want your ability to visualize data to be limited by our product roadmap and our decisions. We recognize that there are other analytics platforms that may have one or two additional chart types or things like that using the drag and drop builder. But what we allow you to do is really build literally anything in the product by including your own visualizations and your own libraries using things like D3. The next question, when I connect, does Mode store my data? No, Mode does not store your raw data. What we do is we cache the query results. So the results from when you execute your queries, those are securely stored on our servers. Not something that we would ever look at without your express permission, as I mentioned before. That allows us to serve those results back to you in an expedited manner without hitting your database again, or you to query the same exact results. Next, how many databases can I connect to my organization? You can connect as many as you want. Really, the sky is the limit. Right now, there are no limits on how many you can connect to your Mode Studio organization. Same next question. Folks are asking about how many collaborators can I invite to my organization? The answer is, again, as many as you would like. Right now, we have no limits on how many collaborators you can have in your Mode Studio organization. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. really hope that you're wildly successful with Mode Studio and your analytics adventures, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us at success@modeanalytics.com if you need anything at all.